Welcome to another episode of Hashtag Fully Books Meets. You have myself, Mace.
Myself, French.
Myself, Andrew.
And today we are joined by a guest that goes by the name of, he wants to go by the name of Chris.
Yeah.
So let's clap him in, guys. Thanks for coming down.
No
Chris.
worries. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I'll be honest. I don't know too much about Chris.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know too much about yourself. So I want you to kind of get into it. I mean, Pox, I think you built the relationship with Chris and you kind of suggested you come onto the Fully Book Meets podcast.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe give some of the background to what you know about Chris and then we let Chris take over?
Yeah, so I've known Chris. Well, I mean, I've known Chris for a long, long time. I'll say minimum, probably 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, minimum 10 years. And obviously I encountered Chris or came across Chris within football. So when I first joined this independent academy, Chris, I think, was signed to Fulham already.
Okay.
And obviously where I say this intriguing story or what Chris maybe made divulge, obviously, during this conversation is where things changed for me is obviously when I was coaching him 1-to-1 before he went to Arsenal. And as I was telling you, French, there was times when we'd be having these sessions and I might be late as such or even after, and I'll see him sitting by the tree reading a book. And although we had a relationship already, I think our relationship got a lot stronger following me asking him questions in terms of what he's reading, why he's reading. Then every now and then I'm asking him what is he reading, anything he can recommend me. And I think that's been maybe an ongoing theme, I'm going to say, ever since then. So I'm going to say, mate, when did you go to Arsenal?
I was about 13, I think.
I think it was 2010 actually.
So hold on,
I was
just
13.
to rewind back. So the ages when you're 1-to-1 training him and you're pulling up late and he's got a book in his hand. How old are you? 12?
I'm like 12, 13, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's really yeah. So and I was asking him for recommendations at that age, as to what he's reading, because he's reading books. I was quite heavy into reading at that moment in time. I'm not too. Not that I don't know why, but you have an absolute laugh. Comments. Anyway, I was heavy into reading at that moment in time, and I was just very interested in as to what he was reading.
Okay, cool. Chris, tell me a bit about your history, man. Like, I've heard an accent straight away. So tell me a bit about like where you're from, where you grew up, where the accent comes from, and then we'll get into it.
Pretty much, like, I was born and raised in Northwest London. Like, my parents are from Congo, both of them, and then me and my siblings were all born in London.
Yeah.
Like Andrew said, I got scouted. I think football has been like a huge part of my life the entire time.
Yeah.
I got scouted when I was about 9 or 10 in school. Joined the IFA where Andrew came to coach, and I was probably there maybe just under a year before I got signed for Fulham.
Okay.
Spent about 2 seasons at Fulham, then moved to Arsenal after that, and then after Arsenal, after about 6 months after I left Arsenal.
How long was you at Arsenal for?
So I was at Arsenal for about 3 years.
Okay.
Until I was 16, and then 16, after leaving Arsenal, I moved to America. So I've been living in America pretty much for the last like 7 years. It doesn't feel like it, but it's I was like counting it the other day. It's been like 7 years just been in America, living out there. So
What was you doing out in America?
So I went to school out in America. I went to uni out in America. And then when I graduated, I pretty much just stayed behind, started working and just, kind of finding my way. It was a lot. There's kind of a lot that happened in that process, but
we're gonna get onto that.
Yeah.
So tell me, just so I can get the transition clear in my head. 16, you leave Arsenal. Was the reason you left Arsenal to move to America, or was it just didn't work out, or?
So it got to 16, and like the scholarship process and everything was happening, and then didn't get a scholarship.
Yeah.
Was kind of trying to figure it out. At 16, that was kind of a crazy time in my life.
Yeah.
Cause like Andrew's known my father as well. Like as long as he wasn't really there. It was kind of me kind of figuring it out on my own. I'd lost my cousin. He had got killed, and another close friend had also died. So during that period of leaving Arsenal, the phone's ringing, all these teams are calling like, we want you to come and kind of do that kind of process. And it was kind of like, all right, I need to kind of take a step back. Because at that age, at 16, I'd also realized like a few other things just about myself as a person that kind of influenced my decision to go to America. So like going to America wasn't the first option. It was almost like the last resort, but it was the resort that I needed. Because the offer had been on the table for about like a year prior. So it actually connects to who I was playing with and who was around me at the time, the reason why I ended up going to America. And like a lot of people don't actually know like that part of the story.
That'd be interesting, because I want you to tell your story, but I think, how old are you now?
23.
23, so you were 16. So there's a few things I look back, and obviously because I was probably 23, 24
Yeah.
at the time, and I look back and I think to myself, there's certain things you said to me which made me think, I mean, like, I could be wrong. You tell me better.
Yeah.
All right. So, by and large, I don't say everyone gets a scholarship at Arsenal, but by and large, if you've been there for a period of time,
Yeah.
more often than not, you get a scholarship, you get a pro, all that type of stuff. But there's a lot of things attached to your move to
Yeah.
Arsenal, which made it very, very complicated.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
remember one day in particular, I was going down a North Cirque, and I thought, let me just swing by Chris's. Like,
Yeah.
it's just right there. Swung by, obviously gave you a call, and you came out, and we started talking. And I was actually surprised that you went at training, and you
Yeah.
explained I ain't been training for like a year or 6 months, and I was like, I sat back, and I think then I rang Eugene obviously to have a conversation
Yeah.
with him in regards to why you ain't been training. And at that point, I think there was something you said. You seemed like almost resigned to, like, I'm not going to be Arsenal. I couldn't even care less of a footballer, if I'm honest. It wasn't really a part of your thinking at the moment in time. It was a
Yeah.
case of, I read these books, I love reading these books,
Yeah.
or not necessarily about the books. It was like, I've got a bigger, like, I'm thinking about something else. I'm not
Yeah.
really thinking about playing football.
Yeah.
Whereas we got another mutual friend, obviously, who was at Arsenal at the time as well. We might have had one or two others as well. But for kids at that age, or anyone who's 15, 16 at this moment in time, to play for Arsenal is a big thing. It's
Yeah.
massive.
Yeah.
It's not, and you went for money. So it's not like you went.
Yeah.
You were
As in Arsenal signing from Fulham for money.
For money.
Yeah, so you
Yeah,
were signed for money, and there was there were add-on fees and so on and so forth, which complicated
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
your scholarship process.
Yeah.
Truth be told, because if you've just been signed,
Yeah.
I don't think it would have been an issue as
No.
to you getting a
And-
scholarship and potentially getting a pro.
Like those add-ons and all those things, those are things that I realized in hindsight made it difficult. But what I didn't realize in the time was those things made it difficult to transition and go other places. And that's where it got crazy.
Other football clubs.
So that's where it got like really like crazy.
I do know
But
some of that, but okay.
but like even in the sense like like being bought from one club to another, and even my entire time at Arsenal, even the nature of that deal, like my understanding of what the deal was a fee was paid and that was it. So I was like, okay, now I'm at Arsenal, everything's taken care of. I wasn't aware of those add-ons and what those add-ons were until looking back in hindsight. And now that I look back, there's certain things that happened when I was at Arsenal that I go, okay, this makes sense now.
Yeah, it was only when obviously I arrived at your house and you told me about your injuries and stuff like that. Firstly, I thought this is a problem. If he hasn't been in 6 months, because one of the famous quotes I remember saying at the time, and someone saying to me, was "out of sight, out of mind."
Yeah.
And I even thought about this a couple of days ago. I thought to myself, what could have been done different? One of the conversations where things got funny was I said like someone really should have been in contact with you and had that conversation and taken you through that process if you weren't going to training, because obviously you're 15, 16 at the time and you're dealing with senior people obviously at a football club. It's not really appropriate, dare I say, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
And it just I think it just made things difficult, really.
Yeah.
You know, things could have been handled maybe a lot better.
Yeah.
I know we've touched on the books, and I promise we're going to swing back round to the books.
Yeah.
But I just for clarity, for my mind and clarity for those listening, because we might have some young footballers up and coming, some parents of young footballers who listen in. What things, and I don't know much about what goes on with the dealings, what kind of things in your deal made it difficult for you to progress at Arsenal essentially, but also, and B, and maybe more importantly, you to actually find another team that wanted you?
Okay.
What kind of things that you know of were included, which maybe people might want to know about? To look out for.
So like, I guess one of the biggest like mistakes that I made at the time is like just not understanding like the nature of the game. Like it's a business first. So it's
you
like
mention this often, Pete.
with anything, like if I spend money on something, I want to see a return. If I don't see that return, I'm not gonna be happy about it. So to an extent, it was almost like when that was done, it's almost like, okay, they've spent this X amount of money. That's money that they want to see back. So like I remember there was a period where I wasn't going anywhere and I was kind of stepping back and like kind of analyzing things. And I don't know if you remember this, because there was a period where I spoke to those teams and was like, all right, let me figure out what's going on in my like personal life, blah, blah, blah. I get back to you, cool, so I can come through for like other trials and stuff like that. That happens, and then 2 weeks later, I pick up the phone again to call back to these same teams that will call me. And within the span of 2 weeks, it's like a 360 flip. It's like, yeah, you know, we're gonna da-da-da-da. So I remember being confused and calling Huge at the time. And you just hit me back and asked me if I've been to this place or this place, but I haven't left my house. So I'm thinking, where's that come from? Like, I haven't been anywhere, but other people are under the impression that I've gone here and I've gone there, but I haven't gone anywhere. So, and like, you just know me since I was like 9, 10 as well. Like, he's not someone that you can like BS. So like, there's no point me lying to him because he makes 2 phone calls and he knows the truth.
Yeah.
But even he questioned me as like, are you sure you didn't go here or go there? So in that time, we tried a couple other things. Those didn't work either. So I was just kind of like, I was already, like Andrew said, at the point where I was a little bit beyond it. But like, to go back to your original point, just understanding that it is a business. Like, as much as they care about you, they're protecting what's most important to them. You know, as long as you're valuable to a club, they're going to treat you the way you understand. And just knowing that. But also, from a parental standpoint, it's more so just having the grit to understand that, yo, this is a dog-eat-dog business. If you want your son to thrive in this, your son has to have tough skin, but you also have to have tough skin. A lot of the times, not just the child, but the parents get sold a dream and think that they're in this fantasy island. My kid
100%.
plays for this team and that team. And they forget that, yo, your kid is going to get blinded by the lights. It's a kid. They like shiny things. It's your job as a parent to regulate that. And I think in my situation, just not having my father, don't get me wrong, my mother was always there. She'd take me to games when she could, but she didn't understand the game. I didn't have someone who was right next to me who understood it. My dad was away, traveling all the time. He wasn't there anymore. So I didn't have that kind of parental figure to walk in the training ground with me for them to kind of look at that and be like, okay, there's someone solid there. We got to treat this accordingly, etc., etc. So I think it's on both ends. But looking back at it, I was really just holding myself accountable, like the mistakes that I made, being a bit naive, being a bit young as well. If there was things that I could have done on that end, it would have been on that end, like understanding, like, yo, like, and I feel like if I had known the nature of the deal also, it would have changed the way I moved as well. Because I'm thinking, okay, this is done. This is taken care of. I'm moving at, you know, like this. But knowing that it was worth so much more and there was much more on the line, it kind of would have been like motivation, step on and be like, yo, you got to prove a bit. You got a lot more to prove that this deal is worth everything that it's worth. But at the time, I had no idea what it was worth.
So just touching on what he said, because I was saying that I lost my thought. What I thought was he probably should have been at training even though he was injured for someone to look over him. So that out of sight, out of mind thing, if he's there, at least people know he's in the building, considering they paid for him. So he's in the building and they know exactly how he is, rather than being at home and now they're looking at, they got players all over the place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they can look and they can see and look after them rather than obviously Chris being at home.
So I know you said you moved to America to study. Did you move at the age of 16 or 18 or?
No, I moved I was still 16 when I moved. And then I started, so like, this is even another crazy thing because I didn't think about these things until after. So I moved at 16 and I started uni in America when I had just turned 17. So I started crazy young.
Right, I was about to get to that point.
Yes.
What prompted the move to America?
So again, so to go back to when I was still at Arsenal, like the last couple of games that I had played prior to me leaving, this was the period where they were bringing in the new batch. They were bringing in the new batch that you could see what was about to happen before it happened. In comes Hector, in comes Gideon Zalem, in comes all these foreign kids that came together. There's a couple more that didn't quite get there, but it was like a batch of 7. Serge Gnabry, Christoph Olsen, all great players. And there was a couple others. So you could see what was happening. But right when Gideon was coming, the school that I ended up going to was the school that Gideon was supposed to go to. So they had sent people over to watch Gideon while he was here to see if he's actually going to do the deal because they still weren't sure. And when they came and saw him, they had contacted his dad and said, what's this kid's situation? And they got in contact with me like that. But when they first got in contact with me, I wasn't really thinking about America as an option. It was just kind of, all right, let's put this to one side and let's handle what's going on here. And so that was how I ended up going to America like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then that pretty much prompted it. And by the time I like got to the point where I knew I wanted to go to America, it was more so like resetting. It's like, let's reset.
Clean start.
Let's clean start. Let's go figure out who I am away from this ball. Because the one thing playing football at that level does is you get so wrapped up in playing football, you forget that you're a human being before that. It's like anything. You forget that you're a human being before any of these things. Like, before you're a doctor, before you're a lawyer, you're a human being first. And if you don't know that person, then the rest of it is useless. And I grew up thinking, if I do certain things, I'm not going to be that person. Just to like leave Arsenal and realize I was that person that I wasn't trying to be. So that was kind of where I was at when I decided like, all right, let's go figure this out.
So what part of America did you move to?
I moved to DC.
Yeah.
I spent 6-7 months in DC, which I think was the most important period of my life. And then I moved to Virginia to start school in that fall. And I spent 1.5 years in Virginia before moving back to DC, where I've been since.
So did any family move with you? Or you got
it was just me.
Wow, at that age?
Yeah.
So what did they do? Like, so you go over there. Virginia's where you went. No, Virginia's where you went.
DC.
Yeah,
I
DC
was
first,
in
but
DC.
Virginia's where you went to uni.
Yeah, that's where I went to uni.
So when you're in DC first, who you staying with?
So they had put me up with a host family
Okay.
to stay for those 6-7 months.
When you say they, who's they?
So the uni had
Okay.
set me up with a host family. So I had landed in Virginia to go see the school, and then they basically put me in DC to go like kind of just stay active before coming in, because to go play that full. And the way like America seasons are set up, it's not like the 11-month season. You got your full season and then your spring season, but the spring season there's no real season, so it's just practicing and playing a couple friendlies and stuff.
So you've done uni now. You moved back to DC. What are you doing right now in America?
Oh no, so I didn't finish uni in Virginia. I left Virginia.
Okay.
And then I transferred to a school in DC.
Okay.
And I finished in DC.
Okay.
So I was about like 1.5 years and then like 2.5 in DC.
I thought yeah.
Finished in DC, and then I started working for a sports company. And so I was doing 2 things. I was doing research, and I was also working for this sports company. And that was just coaching, but like more like psychology involved as well, because I went to school for psychology. So it was like trying to combine the two, trying to figure out a way to combine the two and like work with programs and different programs and stuff like that.
Okay. Question. No, because I'm gonna flip back onto the books now.
Okay.
Because I'm interested in the books.
Yeah.
Why or how a 12, 13-year-old is reading books that someone 10 years old or so wants to know. Can you recommend me a book? What's that book?
Yeah.
Where does this stem from? Tell me about your love of books. Tell me about books you've read.
So reading books, I say it was like a 2 kind of part like push, and it was basically 2 teachers that I had.
What, it's like a primary school here.
One's primary school, one's secondary school. So my first teacher in primary school, this is probably like year 4, year 5. You know, like in primary school, they give you those tasks, like you got to read a book a week, and then you got to write in our school, it was you either had to rewrite the ending, you had to write a summary, and then maybe an illustration. So we'd get that every week, and I wasn't really doing it. I was half-assing it, but they'd ask me to read in class, and they could tell like he's reading way above like his age. So it was level 1 to 5, and like year 4, year 5, the average is like level 3 or 4. You got maybe 4 or 5 kids on level 5, and not till like year 5, you might have 1 kid on level 6. So I was probably on like level 5 in year 4, which was still ahead. And they were like, he's not really engaging here, so we're gonna try push him up to 6. But when they pushed me up to 6, the same thing was happening. So I remember they put me in a room, kind of similar to this, that was like in between classrooms, and asked me to read like a level 6 book, and then like tell them what's happening. And they're like, he gets this too, so like, where's the disconnect? So after like a little while, my teacher at the time calls my mum in and kind of says, look, we know he can read, we know his comprehension level is good, we just think probably the books aren't engaging him. Take him to the library, let him find something that might grab him. And I remember it like it was yesterday. Like my mum got me a library card, Oakington Manor Library. It's not there no more. It was in Wembley. And she'd take me to the library, but it still hadn't clicked. I would pull books out of the library, leave them in my room. When it's time to return them. But maybe the 3rd or 4th time, she's got the late charge from the library.
Yeah.
So she's come in the room like mad, like, where's the book? And she's seen it on the shelf, but it's been there so long, it's got dust on it.
Yeah.
So she's like, I know you haven't read this one, and I put my money on it, you haven't read any of the other ones that you took out. So she said, we're going to the library and we're not leaving until you find something you're going to read. And you know, like when you're a kid, because you haven't lived as long, time feels like much longer. So we could have been there in 2 hours, but it felt like 6. And I was trying to run game on her. I was like, yo, I'm gonna walk away, come back in 10 minutes, be like, I can't find nothing. And every time I came back, she wasn't having it. To the point where it got to one point where she wouldn't even look at me. I just come back, I was crying, all of that. Like, Mom, let's go. She's like, go. So eventually I gave in, I caved in, and I just like remember going to find one book, and it was like the side of it was orange and it had Bang on it. I'll never forget, it was a book by Sharon G. Flake called Bang. It was orange, pull it out. The front cover had a black kid that looked like me. And I remember it specifically because like I've always like one of the things that people used to like grill me about was my ears. My ears always stuck out. So they used to call me Dumbo and stuff like that.
Is that how you're going your dreads?
Nah, not really. Like, that was kind of like a whole other thing that happened. But I never really took it personally because like even like when I was like younger, girls always loved my ears. So I was like, if the man them are dissing me for my ears, but the girls love me, what do I care? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, who am I trying to impress here? Who am I really trying to impress here? Do you know what I'm saying? So I didn't really mind it, to be honest. So then Bang, read that, I breezed through that book. Like probably in less than a week, I know I finished that book because like I couldn't put it down. And it was a story about a black kid, similar to like most black kids who grew up in impoverished neighborhoods, trying to navigate that. And his dad his dad lived like around the corner from him, but he was never around. And he used to just try to tackle that with his friends. As they got older, they start seeing stuff. They're walking by like crack houses, etc. Till his dad comes back in his life and says, look, but he's unapologetic. He's kind of just like, yo, like, what do I have to be sorry for? So he takes him and his best friend on a camping trip and he leaves them at the campsite far out and says, your mission is to find your way back home. And that's basically the premise of like the book. And that was the first book I read from back to front. And like, that was the first one. But the problem with after that was every book I was looking for was a replication of that. So I fell back into the same cycle of not reading anything because it was like, if it's not like this, I don't care. But then I got to secondary school and this was like the one that kind of set over the top. My French teacher, Miss Kelly, like she kind of let me be the class clown for like a year, from year 7 to year 8. And as she got to know me, I didn't realize until after, like, she was just studying me. Like, why is this guy a clown? But I grew up speaking French at home.
Congolese,
so I could skate through the class without doing much. Until one day she stuck it on me, held me off to school, and it's kind of like, and I went to an all-boys school. So for like now I can see like for a woman to be a teacher in an all-boys school, you have to be great, otherwise they're going to roll on you. So she was just like a no-nonsense. She just sat me down and was like, listen, you're an idiot. And she was just kind of like, you got potential inside you that I can see that you probably can't even see right now. And if you don't get it together, you're going to waste it. You need to find new friends and you need to get your ish together. And I remember like it was yesterday, she took a book after she explained to me like what her plan was, what her goal was, where she was going, how she wasn't going to be teaching for long. And she said, this is temporary. She took a book, shoved it in my chest and was like, read it. I'm giving this to you. But she was like, I'm not giving it to you to keep. I'm giving it to you to read and give back to me, which means you got a couple of days to get through this. And the first book she gave me was Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
Blood. You're 12. This is yours.
I'm at 12.
You know, I just got shivers.
Like, I'm 12.
I just got shivers.
Like, it was crazy.
Hard.
And then she gave me like 2 or 3 books. So she gave me that book. She gave me another Napoleon Hill book that was like more of a formula book.
Yeah.
And then I think the last book she gave me was Think and Grow Rich. No, it was Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
We used to talk about that.
Yeah, so those were the 3 books she gave me before she ended up leaving. And like, she was the real deal because a year later, she would still call and ask about me.
Really?
And we'd talk about books. And everything she said that she was going to do, she did. So at that point, when she gave me those books and I was reading through those, at first, I don't even like Think and Grow Rich, like for a 12-year-old, that's a heavy book.
Right, about to.
So at the start, I don't think I really liked it. It was more of a test. Like, you gave me a test, I'm not losing. Like, I have to. And then eventually, it's like, okay, I'm starting to pick up what this is about. And once that happened, it was out of here. Like, nonstop.
That's dope.
Yeah. And that's pretty much how, like, I got into books. And then at first, I was really only reading, like, self-help books and books about business and all those kind of things. It wasn't until I got a little bit older, I started reading other things as well and started incorporating like a more holistic like reading approach. Yeah.
So when you read, do you take notes and that? Especially, do you know what? Let's kind of stay with Think and Grow Rich. When you first initially read that book,
Yeah.
how did you take it in?
I had to take notes because some of it was so big. If I didn't write it down and come back to it, it would just skip me. So a lot of it was reading things over and over again, taking notes, highlighting. And that's kind of how I read now. It's like taking notes, highlighting everything that I need to come back to. I usually have like post-it notes. Slap them in a book, dissect it. And now I'm really big on reading books over again. Before I'd read it once and be done with it. But I started to realize like when you're reading books, you're really reading yourself. Do you know what I'm saying? So
I told you once.
Some more shivers.
and it took me a little while to get there, but like it's like you read something once, you put it down, you go out, you experience life, you come back, you read it again. It's a completely different book.
Yeah.
But the words haven't changed. The only thing that's changed is you. So you start to understand that it's you that you're reading. You're projecting yourself onto that book and taking it back. So that kind of information, and when I started understanding that, it was like, all right, pick things up a second time. And sometimes you might have to pick it up a third time. And there's some books that I've encountered now where it literally says you got to read this 100 times.
Think and Grow Rich is one of those books.
Exactly. So, but I've always had a great memory, so it's never like I pick it up because I've forgotten what I've read. It's like, there's certain things like in the rule book that she gave me, the first one that she gave me, it had like a quote in it that I've never forgotten to this day. And I may have even told you it before. It was like, through the operation that water seeks its level and everything in the universe alike nature seeks its kind. I read that when I was 12 and I've never forgotten it to this day. It had a formula in it, like a R2A2 formula that was like recognize, relate, assimilate, and apply whatever type of information or whatever you're coming across. So things like that like always stuck with me.
No, I love that. So going on from Think and Grow Rich, what other books would you say that has left a
big mark?
Yeah, impactful.
When I was at Arsenal, my brother gave me The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And I read that, I was about 13, 14. I used to read that on the way to training and on the way back. That was another one that like set off a spark. And then from there, it goes on. Like I read like The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. I read books about like health. So I read like African Holistic Health by Dr. Layla.
You used to talk to me about, what's his face? Sorry, apologies. So I'm gonna say Nipsey Hussle and
Dr. Sebi.
Thank
And
you.
Dr.
So yeah,
Sebi,
we used to have big conversations about that.
I was on that early. I started listening to Nipsey when I was in year 7. So like everything he used to say,
big conversation with Dr. Sebi.
I used to pick up on it, like Dr. Sebi.
Water, that's the one. That's where I changed my
big on
water
that.
thing. So from going, because you used to tell me about spring water and tell me the difference between spring water and mineral water and that type of stuff.
And I was a big fan of like Dick Gregory when I was like 12.
That's the one.
And he put me onto like a lot of stuff as well. And I just started reading that. I was reading, because I went to school for psychology, so I read like a lot of psychology books as well. So stuff like the ISIS Papers by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, all different types of stuff, man. Like Jane Elliott, a lot of research, like Don Elligan, who wrote a book called like Rap Therapy, which is where a lot of my research was based as well. So it was just reading whatever I could get my hands on really at that point. And I'd be here for days, like the 4 agreements, the 5th agreements, like.
Do you know them?
No, I never heard of them.
So it's basically like, it's another kind of like rule book that's based on like ancient Toltec principles of how they live their lives, and like 4 principles that they hold key to their kind of like culture and stuff. And it kind of goes through each principle and breaks it down and kind of tells you how to apply it. So like the 4 principles is like, I'm off the top of my head, I'm gonna see if I can remember. Be impeccable with your word. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions. And the 4th one I think is, the 5th one I know is be skeptical, but in the sense like always question the source and stuff like that. But like those principles changed a lot for me as well. Like even things like don't take things personal and being impeccable with your word, like understanding that it's not necessarily like be impeccable with your word. It's kind of like word is bond, but it's also understanding like, are you accurately conveying the message that you're trying to deliver? You know, like it's so easy for things to get lost in translation. So how good are you with the word that you're actually like using, as well as obviously not using words to hurt yourself versus stuff like that. So
I mean, this not off topic. This like, where does someone at that age almost find time to read? Because
everywhere, man. When you're a kid, all you have is time.
I know, the truth be told,
Like,
that is fact.
you know what I'm saying? Like, you're playing those hours. You're playing PlayStation. Those hours you're on the bus. Those hours you're on the train. Like all of that
Not
stuff.
everyone at that age is thinking like
like
that.
that.
No, it's true.
Because, sorry, I'm saying this because your trial would have been at the age of 13.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. I remember telling you. I'll probably have the text message. I remember telling him. I wrote a diary entry about his trial. I was blown away, blown away because this is what I remember from the trial. And I won't make it a long story. Is we go to Ipswich. Go to Ipswich. First thing I see is, they're not passing to him. So usual trial tricks. No one's passing to the player. All right, to the trials because then no one wants him to be signed or whatever it is. I remembered it. I don't want to say who they are because they'll probably know who they are. All right. I'm not going to say nothing. All right, cool. So they're not passing. Then out of nowhere, I remember you being aggressive and then you get into a scuffle with someone. And out of nowhere, everyone's backing him. Everyone on the team backed, I don't want to say the beef, but everyone backed it. And then there's people on the sideline going, you're a fucking player. No, like everyone's saying, he's a player, mate. No one knows your tries, but everyone's saying, this guy, he's about it. And then at half time or on the third, because I don't know if you're playing thirds at the time, manager, don't know his name. I remember taking you lot behind the, I want to say the dugout, and he literally laid into you lot. I'm thinking someone who finally gets it.
Yeah.
But I was blown away as someone at age of 13 can literally just take control of a situation.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because not
game
many
vividly.
people at that age can. Because it was on the line, truth be told.
Yeah, I remember that. And I remember the Fulham trial was quite similar as well.
So I didn't go to that. I'd probably left Fulham at that point.
It wasn't really a trial, but yeah.
Yeah, because you played Fulham immediately after or not long after. No, you were signed and then you went to Fulham.
Yeah, I was signed and then we went to Fulham. But I mean, when I first went to Fulham, it was the same kind of thing. It was like one game we played Crystal Palace, and I remember Huge was like with one of the other guys who was working there at the time, but Huge didn't tell him who I was. So this is a story Huge told me after, and he was like, they came over to watch the game, and he was kind of like the same thing, like, yo, we got a player in that kid, but Huge was like, that's my kid. He was like, oh. Like, that was kind of crazy, but I mean, I don't know. I would attribute it all to like the books and stuff, but I think a lot of it just came from, a little bit of it's my older brother, but it's weird because he probably reads more than I do now, but I probably started like heavy reading before he did. And it was a little bit of that and just growing up in the neighborhood, man. Like, I grew up playing with people older than me my whole life. And it was always like, yo, it's the skinny, like, short kid, like, trying to bully me and stuff like that. And I was always small, so you had to fight for what you wanted. Otherwise, you're not going to be heard or you're not going to get what you want. So, like, going into environments like that, it didn't seem like, you know what I mean? It's just like, all right, this is another day on the estate or something like that. So,
how often do you read now?
Now, I read every day. It's part of, like, my routine at this point. But, one thing I try to do as well is like I stay away from like online books and stuff like that. I try to only read like hard copies.
Paperback or
because it's just like, it's at the point now where there's so much social media that reading's almost an escape. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, if I pick up my laptop to read, it feels like I'm just falling back into that. So I kind of use it to get away from that and kind of seclude myself from that. And then also just like the nature of like understanding psychology, like the way your brain works and how it's so much better for your brain to literally read paperback books than it is to look on the screen. It's kind of like the lesser of two evils because you're getting the radiation from the screen versus when it's so good for your brain. Like reading delays the onset of like dementia and stuff like that. So just like knowing that it's like exercising.
Yeah, I definitely find reading the actual book is more beneficial than actually reading it from my iPad. I mean, I do both when I need to, but more often than not, I'll have a stack of books to read. Just turning the papers, holding an actual book and getting that feel is esoteric. It's
a great feeling,
And I want to, not even fast forwarding, because I think you can take us to a whole nother level in terms of reading and stuff like that. And I'm sure reading has taken you places where, well, you can't really imagine really in terms of your mind. Where are you now, whether it's with reading or with what you're doing in life? Because I didn't even know you finished uni. So my question to you the other day was like, what are you doing now? And you're telling me you're here, you're there, so on and so forth. So what is it you're doing now?
So currently, research, I make music at this point and really just working in So the whole reason I went to like the sports company to try and marry like psychology and sports was kind of like America's a little bit behind in terms of like football. And so it was kind of trying to implement the psychology of it into the sports of it. And the reason I do research and I make music is because my research was in music therapy. So my whole thing was I've always wanted to marry the two and kind of put them together, and just understanding that like, what's another way that we can reach kids and reach Black kids specifically? Because throughout all my research and everything, there were so many gaps in the research in terms of like Black people going to therapy and just spaces for Black men to even go and speak to someone, and where the disconnect was, and like, why can't people engage them? And I've always been a music lover, so it was like a no-brainer. It's like, yo, like, and I think I may even have spoke to you years ago about it when I first got into it, and it was just like, yo, like, more times than not, one of the things I realized is I probably don't even have to ask someone what they're going through. I could just ask them what they're listening to. And when I ask them what they're listening to, more times than not, that's the gateway for me to know exactly what's going on in your life at that moment. And it holds true for most of my friends and most of the people that I've been around. So it was like, how do we connect it? And then I got into research in DC. So like one of the reasons I left Virginia was because Virginia was a bubble. It was the kind of bubble that a kid like me coming from where I came from needed. But after a year, it wears off and you start to realize, okay, I've gone to both extremes. I need to come back and find a balance now. So I was looking for certain mentorship in Virginia that I couldn't find. Like, Virginia was a crazy experience. Like, I tell people I could write a book on it alone, like just Virginia. And it was the first time I'd been around people that were that affluent, people who came from generational wealth, and just seeing the way they behaved and their patterns of behavior versus mine. And you don't realize like how materialistic London is until you leave. You don't realize how fast you're forced to grow up here till you leave.
Wow.
And when I got to Virginia and people are asking me like, yeah, so like, where you coming from? What you been up to? Like, and I'm telling them everything I'm done. They're looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, and I speak to my friends about this all the time. Like, you grow up in London, by the time you're 12, 13, you have to know how to navigate the city. You have to know how to get to and from school. You got to know where you can and you can't go, where you're going to get into trouble. And if you don't know these things by year 7, year 8, you're going to find out real quick. You know what I'm saying? It's the kids that weren't street smart that got in the most trouble, like after school, because they didn't know where they could go. So if you don't know these things, there's going to be a lesson waiting for you at some point after school, and then you learn. Kids in America that I went to school with at 13 are still getting bused to school on a yellow bus. They don't even know how to move in their own towns and cities. So they grow up like a lot slower. So you realize that like on one hand, you become a lot more street smart and mature, but you get robbed of a certain innocence that you could have a lot longer, that gives you a bit more time to like grow up. So being around that kind of money as well. And I remember one time, it happened a couple times, but there was 2 times. By the time I left London, I had like thrown most of my clothes away. Like, we used to get like money, especially like, you know, for travel and stuff like that. But you didn't really need money for travel. So you kind of looked at it like you was getting paid as a young like kid playing football. At that time, you got nothing to spend money on other than shoes, clothes, and all this kind of stuff. So you kind of get trapped in that. And by the time I'd left to move to America, I was kind of over it. I was this is dumb. You know, it was almost like using those materials to overcompensate for what you was lacking inside kind of thing. And it's like, it's cool when you're a grown man and you know who you are, but as a kid, when you're that young, you got some things to figure out before you can kind of subscribe to that. So I remember 2 instances when I first moved out to America. Before I moved in with the host family, I was staying at the Marriott Hotel. They put me in the Marriott Hotel. And I remember coming downstairs one day for breakfast, and there was a guy sitting maybe like over there, like maybe where the camera is. And he had on a black scarf, but it had like a white tag. So the contrast kept catching my eye. Yeah. And when I looked at it, it had Gucci on the white tag. But I was confused. I'm coming from a place where the only Gucci I recognize has green and red stripes on it. And if it doesn't have that, I don't know what it is. So I'm thinking to myself, he's definitely got money, because I started Googling it and looking at it, and you realize that all these designer brands create 2 lines at least. There's one for the people we want you to feel like you got something, but you don't. And we got one for the people that really got something that don't care and don't need you to know that they're in it. And so when that happened, I was like, all right, cool. Then the second time, one of my closest friends in my first year of uni, generational wealth, family came from money, right? I'm not even gonna say like how they made it, but it was like it was to do with tech, but early tech in terms of like phone wires and telephone wires and like, so she had bread, but it took me forever to even know she really had money like that. Like she would shop at the thrift store, she'd have one pair of shoes and like, and I'm thinking, why is my suitcase got stuff worth more than yours and you really have it and I don't? Like, what is, this doesn't make any sense. And it was a constant, like everyone I met that came from it. And then it's like you get to the holidays, it's like the winter break and then they got like the spring breaks and everyone's going to the beach house in Miami or the penthouse in upstate New York and you're thinking, bro, I don't even have money to get back to London. Where am I going? And that was like kind of what kind of like popped the bubble a little bit because it was like that year in Virginia was really the first time I was able to kind of let my guard down and have fun without having to look over my shoulder and worry about what's coming or having to. So it was like a necessary thing, but then it's like you snap out the bubble, life over there hasn't stopped. You kind of tell yourself like, oh, things aren't happening, but you catch up with what's going on back home and it's like, all right, cool, this isn't a luxury I can afford right now. This might be the next generation or the generation after, but for me, we still got work to do. We can't be this. So then that's when I was like, all right, let's go to DC. And that was where I found the mentorship and the kind of guidance that I needed. Started doing research with, in a research lab that's actually like taken off as well. So my mentor, Dr. Fia Embili Shaka, she started a research lab called psychotherapy. So it was using hair as an entry point into mental health services. And when you start to look at the research in hair and everything, it's like your stress and all your trauma shows in your hair because your hair is literally an extension of your nervous system. So if you're stressed out, if you're angry, if you're depressed, it's gonna show in your hair, literally. And when you think about like black people and their history with hair, and you start to look at what hair is meant to black people, like it's deep. You know what I'm saying? Like you had slaves who were using their hair as maps to get away from plantations. Do you know what I'm saying? Like the history of the hair is heavy. And then you gotta think about like the social aspect of hair in terms of like what certain black people have to do to even be able to go to work with their hair. The straightening, the heat, the perming, all this stuff that fits into a Eurocentric standard of beauty that's not ours and how that affects people psychologically. So it was like learning all of this and realizing like, yo, like even like my mom and stuff, I had to come back with this information and be like, yo, you can't use this shampoo. You can't use this. Like this stuff is like purposely made to damage your type of texture. And if you don't understand the texture of your hair, you're already killing the root. This is the one of the most important parts of your body. Your brain is not that far under the top of your head. So imagine you putting chemicals in that and it's going straight to your brain. Do you know what I'm saying? And it was a lot. It was a lot for me to process.
Bro, you are, let me say something, yeah.
He's taken back, he is.
It's a lot now.
Nah, bro, I don't care what these two buffoons think.
This guy's matching it. Go on,
It's a joke.
We could take it outside, bro.
Nah, real talk. Nah, bro, you wise beyond your words because you know what the maddest thing is? My barber, who has been cutting, studying hair for years upon years, bruv, he feeds me this info.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking to you here. You're not a hair specialist.
Nah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he'll go to cut my hair, yeah? And he'll tell me, you're not drinking your water.
Yeah.
You're stressed, you got these bumps here. Or he goes, yeah, you're all right at the moment because I can see it in your scalp.
It's all there.
Mad, bro.
All the information
it's
is
mad,
there.
bro.
And it works like that with your entire body. Whatever you put in your body will show on your face, on your hair. Like, you can't hide it. And that was one of the things that I had to learn. And even when I started growing my hair, like, I didn't really know what I was doing with my hair. But it was more so just like, I'm just going to listen to my hair and let it go. And then, you know, naturally your hair will lock as a black person if your hair is a specific texture and stuff like that. But just, it took me on an entire journey. And after salute, my mentor, Dr. Fia Embili Shaka, she was one of my mentors. I had a couple that really just hit home. And she would do my hair and say the same thing. It'd be like, yo, like this in your diet. And the way she put it to me was, don't put nothing in your hair that you wouldn't necessarily you wouldn't eat and put it inside your body. So it was learning like the different natural products and stuff like that. And one of the things actually that we ended up doing, I started going to presentation to make presentations at different research conferences with the research that we were doing. And that was one of the things we put together, because hers was hair, mine was like music therapy. How could we link the two? And the first thing that we suggested was making the barbershop a safe space for Black people to talk about their mental health. Because you think about it, your barber's pretty much like your therapist anyway. You talk to your barber about everything. You have barbers that have been cutting people's hair their whole lives. 25, 30 years. He knows you, your dad, your baby. The rapport is already there. So whether it's coupling barbers with therapists or teaching barbers different techniques to kind of talk to the people that sit in their chair. And that was kind of one of the aspects that we went down. And we went to a couple conferences and kind of delivered that and was kind of like, how can we make this a thing? So that was also one of the things that I was trying to do in my time in America, was kind of start these programs and do these different things. Yeah.
And with with the information that you have and you've told us, what are you actually trying to do at this moment in time?
Right, because I want to read that book. I'm not gonna lie. You said I could write. I want to read that book.
So one of the things when I first, the way I guess like scientific writing works, obviously you've done like all the research and you've done the experiments and stuff. You submit it to journals. So over the last like 4 or 5 years, I've been working on manuscripts to go to scientific journals, but I also want to write like my own books that speak on my experiences. But then there's also music. Because the one thing I realized as well is like, in academic spaces, we don't have that much representation the higher you go up. And my thing is they're always looking at where's your credibility. The equivalent of it would be like, in order to go into a lot of scientific spaces, if you was a musician, you'd either have to be Grammy nominated or you would have to have a Grammy for them to even respect you. In academic writing, it's the same. If you're not a published writer, you really hold no weight out here. So that was the reason I wanted to get research published. Because my thing is, I feel like I need to be able to walk into any door and be able to tell you what I know, and you have to respect it. So when I was going to these conferences and these places, and I'm going to these Ivy League schools and they got 4 or 5 degrees, I'm still walking in there the same way I walked on that field the first time. It's like, you don't know what I know. What I know, you can't pay for. There's no degree that can teach you how to connect to my people. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was always like, all right, if I got this, I got that, and I have the music, and the goal is to create these programs where we can use music and have music therapy. I have everything to make me credible, that I don't need to rely on anyone else or feel like I'm walking into a room where I'm not prepared or I don't have the know-how to kind of navigate. So it was just about making sure I had all the bases covered. And it was also, to an extent, I enjoy it. So it made it easier to kind of do all of that. So long term, it would be to kind of create these programs and start to do music therapy and stuff like that, as well as just making music because it's a form of expression. Like, music at this point for me, like, it doesn't matter whether we sell 1 million or we never ever sell anything. It's a form of expression. Like, everybody needs an outlet. Do you know what I'm saying? If you put something into a vending machine, something comes out. If you punch something into a computer, something comes out. There's always an input and an output. But for most people, all they do is input information and stuff, and there's no output. You're literally like, it's like a brain fart or creating mental constipation.
So give an example of that. So a lot of people put information into a computer and they don't get
anything out. For instance, like going through whatever you're going through, you might be stressed because of your bills, your work, whatever. Everything that you take in, and there's no outlet. There's so many people that bottle up their emotions and don't talk about it. Like, they just don't have anyone to talk to or whatever the case may be. And if you don't let it out, you're going to get constipated. It's like taking a dump. If you put food inside you and you don't let it out, you're going to be constipated and you're going to get sick. Most people, if you look it up even psychologically, they tell you that people get sick by holding on to information and like holding on to things and not letting it out. That's like one of the quickest ways to shut your body down and get sick, is by constipating yourself, by just holding it in. So it's like, how do we create outlet? And when people think about like why music's so important, so I read a lot of books on like music and why music is as big as it is and why it controls the whole world pretty much. It's because when you break it down to a science, like music is frequency and it's waves. That's all this planet is pretty much made of, is waves and frequencies, everything. A conversation is waves and frequencies. So every single person that you meet is literally a walking instrument. You have a heartbeat, you have like a pulse, which is like a drum kick. you speak in iambic pentameter, which is rhythm and rhyme, you're literally a walking instrument. And if you send waves at an instrument, that instrument is either gonna go up in frequency, down in frequency, but it's gonna have some type of reaction. So it's literally like, music's like one of the most natural things like in life. So it was just more so about finding an outlet. Like how can we pretty much let whatever's coming in out. And so that's where like the music came into it. And I've always been writing. Even when I was playing football, I really didn't tell many people, but I always wrote, whether it was poetry or whether it was whatever. So my thing is just like, we need more outlets for people.
Mm-hmm. So you got any questions?
No, I was intrigued. Just listen to your story, man. It's amazing.
Cool. I probably got one last question. It's more a case of maybe just dumbing down one or two things for myself. All right. So, by putting out these journals or allowing these journals to be given credibility. So I don't know necessarily where you submit them. Mm-hmm. By submitting them and then having the credibility, you then want to use those as a form of, I don't want to use the word credibility again, but to allow you to then run programs and stuff like that.
No, because like the way I guess it would work is you got to have certain qualifications to do certain things, right? Okay. So like, I was going to go get my PhD when I was in America. When I had finished, I got offered like 2 scholarships that would have covered tuition, but the housing was crazy. But then at a certain point, I was just kind of like, I don't even know. Because to be quite honest, I've never liked school. I've never liked it. I went to school because I just think life's funny like that. Like you say you'd never do something, and then like the only way to get to where you want to go is like I had to go to school. So that was my compromise. It was like I got to humble myself and go to school to get to this new surrounding. So I never really liked school. And even when I was there was times where I felt like, I don't want to do this. But my brother was always like, yo, you're going for free. Like you're leaving school with no debts. You're in a brand new country. Like make the most of it. And and you start to realize that school's not to get an education. It's really to network. Like it's really to go there and have conversations and meet people that you're going to be working with. And do you know what I'm saying? And when, like I have friends now that went to Ivy League schools like Yale and stuff. And when I sit with them and I have conversations, it's so far from the conversations that I have when I'm with like my friends from the ends or whatever. But the one thing I realize is the reason they all get sent to those Ivy League schools is so they all know each other. Mm-hmm. That's literally all it is. You have a network of people that are going on to be Fortune 500 billionaires and owners of companies, and he's your best friend. That's it. Like, that's literally the only reason. And like, when I speak to them and I talk to them about that kind of stuff, they literally say the same thing. So it's really just like an opportunity to network, and it gives you time to kind of find yourself in the midst of that, if you do it right. Because there's a lot of things that can go wrong in that process. And like, even I initially went on a scholarship to kick ball, but even that was like a whole experience in itself, dealing with like the NCAA, which is like a completely different machine. That's like this $1 billion industry, and it's kids that are still in school. They're not even professionals. And I signed a contract at Fulham. I signed a contract at Arsenal. I've never seen a contract like the contract I saw the first day I turned up to school to sign that contract. And it was when I saw that contract, I was like, damn, they got me. Like, they got me. Like,
in what sense?
I turned up late. So, first of all, the contract's like 400 pages. This isn't a professional contract. It's 400 pages. Any contract that's 400 pages, like, it's ridiculous. And they were expecting me to just go in there and just sign it. And it's like, it should take you 10 minutes. Just go in there. I sat in the room for like an hour, just reading through this contract. And like, the things that I'm seeing in this contract, I couldn't believe it. But in my mind, it was like, I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, to now walk out this room and go, after everything that we sacrificed to get here, would be crazy. And then when you start to dig and you start to like learn about like the NCAA and how some of these athletes in America are living, they're not professionals, but they're generating billions of dollars for schools. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got whole schools in America, all the salaries are paid off of the money that the sports teams generate. Mm-hmm. Like, it's crazy. And some of these kids go to sleep hungry. Some of them, they make no money from it. And it's not even necessary that they should make money from it, but when you understand how much money is being generated by college sports, it's debated often, like all the time. And it's a huge conversation that's going on about the NCAA. And like, you got so many people in America who don't even watch pro sports, but they watch college sports. You got stadiums in college teams like filled out every game. Like, American football stadiums in college holding 90, 100,000, and like Alabama and Texas selling out all year tickets. Do you know what I'm saying? And this is before any of them are pro or whatever.
Wow. And they don't get penny.
And they don't get a penny.
Wow.
Some of them don't even get
penny.
food. Like, it's wild. So even that was like an experience in itself. And just seeing what that, and I was at like one of the best schools in the country. Like Virginia was like one of the best schools for sports and even education. It was like a top 20 school at the time as well. But even going there was just like, I think by that time I was already checked out of like kicking ball, but it was like, this is your meal ticket. Like, so even when I look back and people are like, yo, like, what did you like, do you regret like not playing ball or not going pro or whatever? I'm like, nah, man. Like I got everything I needed. You know what I mean? It got me a ticket away from where I didn't want to be. Took me across the world. Like I got to travel. I got to see so much. So like, I never look at it like I didn't do what I needed to do with it. So
this is almost, you're talking about football, so I just want to touch back on it. So like, I kind of forget. So I remember, obviously, we know Marlon. Obviously, Marlon plays for Millwall.
Yeah.
He played in the playoff cup final.
Yeah.
Did they win or lose? I forget whether they win or lost. So no, he played in the FA Cup semi-final.
Yeah,
or one of the two. All right, cool. So who played in your age group? Because I mentioned Joe Willock the other day and stuff like that. Because I don't know how old he is, but I know they're roughly your age.
Joe is like the youngest of three. He had an older brother, Chris, and Matt. Yeah, Matt was my age. He was like the youngest in our age group. Chris, I think, is playing like in Portugal now for a team.
That is it, Sporting,
yeah.
Sporting that was like a big deal. I remember that. That was a big deal like last year, the year before.
And so they were both younger than me by maybe 2 years or more, but they used to train up because they were capable. Good. Like, and I swear, I can't even remember whether it was Chris or Joe, but one of them scored the dirtiest goal I've ever seen in academy football in my life. Like, I don't know if it's Chris or Joe. I want to say it's Joe. And like, this goal was absurd. Like, I remember watching the game after we had training on a weekend, and he's got the ball from like the right back in the middle. He's playing centre mid, switched it over to the left flank, went and got the ball again, pinged it out to the right wing, like controlling the game, like done a 1-2 in the middle of the park, switched it out to the right wing. He's jogged to the edge of the box. And I remember the ball getting crossed back to him on the edge of the box and like a defender's coming at him. This defender thinks that he's about to volley the ball like top bins. He's faked it and flicked the ball up to his left foot. This defender's got sent to the shops like over there somewhere, Quay. The second defender's come and he's like bottom corner with his left foot, just like drilled it into like, so even then you knew like, yo, those kids were cool. But I played with like Alex Iwobi, he was in my team. Who else? Like Faye, my boy Faye, he's playing at Shrewsbury at the moment. He's been doing like really well. I played with Jermaine Anderson, he was at Peterborough for a long time and now he's at Bradford, I think it is. And like a couple other people, like Chuba Akpom was in my team. Yeah,
you always mentioned him.
Yeah, he was in my team as well. But they were like on the top half of my age group because they were like 95s and we were 96s. So like the core of our team was like really young. So it was like Chuba, who else was in our team? Like Jack Jebb and like a couple other guys. There was like quite a few people. And then obviously towards the end is when like Gideon, Hector and those guys kind of came. But they were a little bit like older as well. So I played with a few people, yeah. Quite a few people. Yeah, there was quite a few.
What book would you say, I'm switching back to books now.
Yeah.
What book would you say you've read which has had the most impact or influence on your life so far?
That's a tough one. I'd say The Alchemist is one of them, for sure. Just because of where I was at the time. And I was starting to like explore like spirituality a lot more. So it was like a gateway. Another book that I really loved or had a big impact. I would say A Rose from the Concrete by Tupac Shakur was something that had a big impact on me as well. Because I've always been like a huge hip hop head. So reading like that was cool.
I was gonna say it's covering French's 3 questions.
Oh, sorry.
There's just so many, man. And each book's different. Like each book is so different. Like I've read so many. Like I read I've read quite a few autobiographies as well. Like I recently finished the autobiography of Che Guevara. That was a really good one.
I've not read it yet.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Asada Shakur, who was like a Black Panther. That was a good one. I read the autobiography of Malcolm X. That was a really big one as well. That had like a big impact on me. And then everything in between, like there's so much, like On the other end of it, like books like The Celestine Prophecy, I read that. That was like a really good read that had an impact on me. There's so many, man, so many books. Like, I don't know if I can narrow it down to just like
just one.
Yeah.
Sorry, and before obviously you probably finish or wrap up, like, do you want to just touch on your music? Because I know your music is something that's been pushed to the forefront. Like, it's been pushed to the forefront. So do you want to touch on your music? I mean, you have in relation to therapy, but just in relation to maybe some of the things you're doing.
Yeah, so some of the things that we've just been doing is really just making music freely, really, just to like kind of make whatever we want. And when you start to like get closer to like the industry and all the politics that come with it and stuff, you just kind of realize like, yo, like it's either you're going to do exactly what you want and not compromise, or you're going to go over there and like be a sheep. Like a lot of it, like what Nipsey said, like I think Nipsey instilled like a lot of the values that I have when like I approach music. And it's just really just ownership. Like I think the biggest thing for me and like what we've been trying to do is just create ownership and just full control of what we're doing, so we can do it when we do it, when we want to, how we want to, and not have to deal with anyone trying to tell us like what to do. So it's a bit more than music. We have like an imprint called CS that we've been developing and just working on, and it kind of spans across like music, clothing, culture, and just different aspects of who we are as people, and trying to bring all my friends in and like the umbrella and stuff like that. Yeah.
And how can people reach you in relation to your music and just in general?
Yeah, so on all...
Because there's been a lot of information we've digested. I'm sure people might want to get contact.
Yeah, so on all social medias, all my social medias are the same. It's Zaire, ZAIRE_CS. And that's pretty much on all social medias. I dropped like an EP in April called The Lotus Moonstone EP, and that's available on like all platforms and stuff. If they go on SoundCloud, they'll find like older stuff of us just like experimenting a little bit more and just like learning, I guess, music and stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to, I guess, for the most part. And a lot of people don't even really know, because I've never been like someone to be like, yo, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. So like a lot of people ask me all the time, like, what are you up to? Where do you even live right now? Like, where have you been and stuff like that. So I just kind of keep it in-house and just keep working and stuff like that, and just try to stay out the way, really. Yeah.
So you just here on vacation at the moment?
Technically I'm here on vacation, but it could get longer just because of like the way the visa process works and stuff like that. And that's affected by everything, politics and what's currently going on in the world and everything. So it can be like a drawn out process.
Yeah, before we go, I mean, I normally ask 3 questions, but I'll ask the last 2. What are the 3 top values that you bring to your business or in what you do on a day-to-day basis?
What I do on a day-to-day basis, the values that I bring. I definitely say like I'm a trailblazer, for one. Like I really jump out the window with a lot of things and kind of set the tone, especially like I think the team that I have and everyone will kind of say the same thing. He's kind of like the trailblazer. 2, just like that thirst for information as well, and just like going out there and really finding what it is that I'm looking for at the current time, whether it's how to do something or how to do something else. And the third thing I'd say, balance in everything. Like balance is big for me. And that's probably the thing I try to exercise the most in my life, is balance. You know, like I understand how important routine is, but I also understand that routine can also be a prison. So understanding the balance between having a routine and also being free to kind of maneuver and leave space for anything that life might give you back. If I could replace any of them, I think I'd actually replace one, because I think one of the things that I've learned about myself, like my best quality is probably my emotional intelligence. That's one thing that I've realized I have a very good grasp on, that's helped me navigate throughout the world. And like for anyone who's like thinking like, what's it, emotional intelligence? It's not just necessarily understanding your feelings, but it's understanding how your feelings affect you, how they affect others around you, and how other people's feelings affect you, and how it also affects like the energy in a room. Like I think I'm really good at like reading energy and stuff like that. And that's pretty much helped me navigate my whole life.
Cool. And if you had 3 realistic wishes, what would they be?
3 realistic wishes from like what I'd want from life or something?
Yeah.
That's a good question, because I was recently having that conversation with someone and I realized that if I had to force wishes out, because the one thing I've realized is that I don't really want anything from life anymore. I used to live life thinking that I wanted all these things and stuff, but this period of my life is the first time I could say where I do not need anything from life. There's nothing life can give me that's gonna make me happier, worse, or whatever. Like, I am full. I'm content, happy within myself. So anything that I desire at this point is for everyone else around me. Like, if my mum was good and my mum like didn't have bills to pay and stuff like that and all my friends were good, bro, I wouldn't need anything. With the clothes that's on my back and everything that I've got, like, I am so good. Like, everything is for everyone else at this point. So it would just, my one wish would be to make sure everyone else around me was good, and the other two you could give to whoever. Like, I don't need them, man.
Oh, we just started out on that.
I don't need
Number
them,
2 for everyone else.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I'm nicking the other one. Everything is for everyone else.
Yeah, man, I really don't need it,
Number
man.
2.
Yeah, no, that's dope. That's dope.
Listen, Chris, thank you. Is everyone wrapped up?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Nah,
bro.
it's been a pleasure, man.
Bro, it's been big,
Time
man.
flies.
It's been wicked, bro.
Yeah,
Properly
I
enjoyed
appreciate
it.
Thank you for having me.
Guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Fully booked on all the social platforms. Say your.
Oh yeah, so Zaire
Something
_CS. That's ZAIRE _CS on everything.
Yeah, if you want that knowledge, you know where it's at, bro.